Grace and peace. I'm Brian Musser, the Baptist campus minister at Drexel University, and this is Peace and Power Bible Study. The peace of Jesus Christ to change your life, the power of the Holy Spirit to change the world. And we are continuing our first week look at workship, putting work back into worship, connecting our beliefs with our work. And this week one Bible study has been looking at defining work, and that is the third video of the week. That is what we'll be concentrating on in this video. At the conclusion of the second video, we came to this, that God works, and our definition of work must be based on the knowledge that God is a working God, although there are some aspects of human work that are distinctly different from God's work. So if we go to define work, we must define it with the idea that it has to be something that God is able to do. So take a moment and ponder this question. What is work? It's something that all of us do, all of us think about, all of us engage in some way or another. But can you define work in a way that is different than, say, a hobby? That is different than, say, recreation, that is different than rest? That what are the things that make up work? And the more you think about this, because some people work and don't get paid for it, volunteering can be work, but it can not be work. Some people work a different thing every day. Some people have hobbies that have turned into stuff that they do for employment. Some people are unable to work. There's a lot that goes into that. And I think the more you think about trying to figure out what work is, the more interesting the definition is for us. Have you ever tried to define what work is? Now, a theologian who I greatly respect at Yale Divinity School tried to do such that in a book called Work in the Spirit. But just kind of look at this definition. It's sort of humorous how heavy it has to be. Work is honest, purposeful, and methodological specified social activity whose primary goal is the creation of products or states of affairs that can satisfy the needs of working individuals or their co-creatures, or, if primarily an end in itself, activity that is necessary in order for acting individuals to satisfy their needs apart from the need for the activity itself. Did that make sense to you? That's a theologian's best attempt at the definition of work, and it's cumbersome. It probably got to the point by the end of that definition that you weren't really sure what we were talking about. Anyways, so we're going to try to create a definition that is a little bit less cumbersome, less burdensome, maybe less precise, but easier to think about and handle. And I propose this, okay? Work is the intentional use of a person's energy, mental, physical, emotional, and or spiritual, to accomplish a specific and valuable change. Now, there's some very important pieces to that definition. Let's work through them kind of one at a time. Work is personal. Work is only done by persons. This does not mean that only humans can do work. The word person is broader than a synonym for the word work. God, for example, is a person. Angels also qualify as a person. Now, we can use animals in work, but it isn't like the animals work themselves. It's the human doing the work using animals. Or we can use objects and tools in work, but the object isn't using a tool. And this is why work has to be done by persons, because work has to be intentional. Work is done based on a previous decision of the will. Work cannot happen by accident or random. This is why work must be done by a person. Only persons have the ability to use their will to intentionally decide to do work. Work needs to be thought of in advance. Work needs to have an intention, a purpose, a meaning to it. We need to figure out what we are going to do and do it. There needs to be a decision process there. Work requires that a person intentionally spend energy or resources. We have to use some of the resources available to us. This energy may come in several different forms: mental, physical, emotional, and or spiritual. But we must intentionally decide to spend some of our own resources in the form of energy to get something done. And this is where human work and God work differs. Because when a human decides to spend energy in one of these categories, that is a net loss. We feel the loss. We feel the drain on our mental energy, or the drain on our physical energy, or the drain on our emotional and spiritual energy. However, an omnipotent, all-knowing, all-powerful God who's infinite does not feel the loss of energy when God works. See, that's where we and God differ in our work. When we expend energy because our energy is finite, we feel it. When God expends energy because God's energy is infinite, God does not have a net loss of energy in that situation. But work always requires us to spend something. And then there needs to be a change. The person has to intend to make a specific change. That change should and must have some perceived value, either to the individual or to others. Energy has to be expended to produce the intended change. However, work does not actually require success in the change. We have to intend to make a change. We have to spend energy in making that change. And that change has to be of value. It has to be an important change. We have to want to make that change. And that change might have to bring about something that we think is better than what is. But we don't need to be successful in actually accomplishing the change. Even if we fail, we still have done work. So that is kind of the definition of work that we've gone through. Looking back over that idea, running back to our definition, work is the intentional use of a person's energy, mental, physical, emotional, and or spiritual, to accomplish a specific and valuable change. Now let's kind of put this all in conclusion. Work is a huge part of our lives. What we believe will affect how we work. God works, so what we believe about work must be developed from the idea that God works. And we must define work, like I tried to, in such a way to allow for a God who works. So, for your homework moving forward this week, and these are more things to think about. During the next week, pay attention to conversations that develop around the subject of work. Is work being discussed in a positive, negative, or even neutral tone? Does the work being discussed fit into our definition of work? Is the work being discussed something that God could metaphorically describe himself as doing? Also, during the next week, pay attention not only what you talk about, but about what you do. Does your work fit our definition of work? Are you intentional about your work? What type of energy do you mostly expend when you are working? What is the change you are trying to see when you work? Think through these things over the next week, and we'll come back and talk about some of them next time. As always, there are 2 ways to join this conversation: live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via Zoom, and these weekly wrap-ups on YouTube and WordPress. I am all over social media: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, WordPress, YouTube. Those links are in the descriptions below. I enjoyed this conversation and hopefully we can continue it sometime soon.